It's just good to be back up here. We are in our love series, the 4 loves, and we did fix the typo. There was an I missing in series last week, so we fixed that. So if that was bugging you, you can focus now. I'll probably do other things like this to distract you, just kind of ramble. So there we go, off to a good start again. We are talking about love, and the Bible, the New Testament, Greek, has 4 different words for love. And so we're going to go each week and cover a different word. Because language is complicated. English is just not a great language, right? We can say, as Michelle said last week, I love my spouse, I love coffee, or whatever. If you're like me or like us, you do what we did as kids. If someone says, I just love ice cream. Well, why don't you marry it? And right? And so, which she often says, well, I think I will. So we use love to cover lots of different things that we enjoy, that we appreciate, or that we love, whatever. But it's like it doesn't really capture like what does that mean, right? Because things have different weight or value to us. Greek is a much more dynamic language. So there's 4 Greek words. Hebrew has kind of 2, 3-ish words that cover love, whereas English just has 1. So if you're reading the Bible, and sometimes you come across a word, and then you're like, what does that mean? You look at another version, and it has a different word, and then another version has yet a different word. And that might, for some of you, that might get you to, cause you to question, like, can I trust this thing? Like, do they even know what they're talking about? They do. They're just trying to find a word that captures a Greek word that means many things or has a much more dynamic meaning than what the Greek words or the English words have. And so, it's tough to translate, and that's one of the issues we have is getting, and then the Greek that's in the New Testament is a dead language now. Like, no one speaks that kind of Greek anymore. So that makes it challenging as well, right? And then words change meaning over time, so trying to figure all that stuff out. So we're going through this month, going through the 4 loves. It's kind of loosely referencing C.S. Lewis's book, The 4 Loves. If you haven't read that, I encourage you to do so. Really, anything by C.S. Lewis is going to be good and challenging and interesting. That's a very good book to get you to think about love a little differently. So this is really just kind of a love refresh, to kind of look at love a little bit, focus in it, because it's a part of our lives, right? Like, we love people, we love things, whatever. We love lots of things, and yet sometimes it can get off track. And so we want to talk about that. One thing about me is that I'm German. I have a lot of German in me, a lot of Polish, and a lot of German in me. And but I don't like sauerkraut. So my mom has wondered for years, because she doesn't like cold weather. I can enjoy cold weather, so it's possible. And depending on my mood and attitude as a kid, the theory increased in seriousness. Were you switched in the hospital, right? Like, so he's being really rotten. He likes cold weather. Probably not mine, right? And but I've known a lot of people who are like they're adopted or they didn't grow up. I didn't grow up knowing my dad, and yet I have some traits of my dad's, and so we have this kind of genetics that kind of passes things down. We pick things up even if we didn't watch it happen. So I'm German, but I don't do a lot of German things. I never root for Germany. Germany is one of those countries that you're like, that's interesting. Also, you did try to take over the world twice. So let's just kind of keep an eye on you, right? So, and that was pretty recent. So Michelle had a high school friend. He's like, I don't like Germans. Like, why don't you like Germans? Well, it's the whole World War thing. I'm still skeptical. So, but German has these great words, right? If you ever looked at it, it's a funny language because it feels like no matter what they're saying to you, you're being yelled at, right? Like, you're in trouble. Like, I love you so much. Like, why? I'm sorry. Like, so it's just this like intense language. It's always kind of this growl kind of language to it. So I have a German word. I didn't listen to a pronunciation because I'm German, right? So I'm just going to trust that inherently I know how to pronounce these words, and then we're gonna talk about it. They have these great words that have these really fun kind of big meanings. So here's the word, Ev, if you want to put it up on the screen. Sargurkenzeit. Sargurkenzeit. There we go. Sargurkenzeit. Anyone know how close I come? Nailed it? Yeah, spot on. Sargurkenzeit. I'm German, people. So Sargurkenzeit is this great word. And like a lot of words, the meaning changed over time. So up until the late 1700s, it was used to describe a time when food was hard to come by. So what, Abby, what? Zeit means time, right? That what we talked about? Yeah. It was used to describe a time when food was hard to come by. In English, the English like literal translation is season of the very smallest potatoes, right? So it's a bad harvest, right? Season of the very smallest potatoes. So this is what it meant up through the 1700s, but then it began to change. But isn't that a great word? Sargurkenzeit. So if you're trying to translate that from, well, not the Bible, but like trying to translate it in English, like, what do you say? Bad harvest kind of doesn't really capture season of the very smallest potatoes. So translation is an issue. So now it has a slightly different meaning. It can mean pickle time, which of course makes sense because gherkin means cucumber, right? So there's that, pickle time. But now it means the off season when everyone's on vacation, which is this long period between kind of July and August when things just kind of slow down. So when someone says they're in Sargurkenzeit, you know that nothing's really going to get done. This has almost no bearing on the rest of the message, just so you know. So if you've been taking notes, you don't have to. It just the point is that language is dynamic, and English is less dynamic, and so we have some translation issues. And so if someone says Sargurkenzeit, you might wonder, the potato is bad, or you're hungry for a pickle, or like what's going on, or you're just not getting anything done, like you're being lazy. What does that mean? Likewise, when we read love in the Bible, or we say love, it can have a dynamic range of meanings. So how's that for a setup? How's that? You're doing all right? Let me pray, then we'll get started. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for your love for us, for giving us your word to help us love each other and love you better. Lord, we just give you this time and ask that you speak through it. In your holy name, amen. All right. So today we're talking about Phileo. So last week it was Storge. This week is Phileo. We're familiar with this, so even if you don't really recognize, it's often referred to as brotherly love. So this kind of relational kind of love. So last week was Storge, which is kind of a familiar kind of thing. This is or like an affection. This is brotherly love. So not necessarily among blood relatives, but this affection we have for one another. It's where we get the name Philadelphia. The city means city of brotherly love. Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love. They haven't quite nailed that yet, but it's aspirational, right? They're hoping to get better and better. The word comes from two Greek words, philos, which means dear or beloved, and adelphos, which means brotherly. So Philadelphia, brotherly love. So this is kind of how we often think of Phileo. It's this brotherly love. Phileo arises from a sense of pleasure found in the object loved. I just enjoy you. I just enjoy that thing. I phileo it. I love it. I enjoy you. It's this affection. It can also be translated kiss. So many cultures, and certainly in first century Israel, it was common to greet each other with a kiss. Some, even male friends, heterosexual male friends, kiss each other on lips. There's lots of cultures we know they kiss each other on the cheek. I've never done that, but I got watch. I'm like, I'm going to do this wrong, and it's going to change the relationship. And so I don't know. I'd rather just be like, nah, I'm not. I don't know how to do that. So it'd be very nerve-wracking for me, but that's a really common thing. And if you traveled at all, how friends show affection can be really different from the West. So I remember my first time in India, I kept seeing all these young men just walking around holding hands. Totally normal for heterosexual male friends to do that. So phileo can be translated kiss. If we go to 2 Corinthians 13, it says, greet one another with a holy phileo, with a holy kiss. So this is not, we're going to talk about eros, I think, next week. It's not that. It's not like a kiss between lovers. It's a kiss between friends. This is something I do to show you that I love you, right? This is an affectionate thing. So this brotherly love. When I first became a Christian, I had gone to church kind of off and on. A lot was pretty comfortable in church. But as a kid, I mean, like the stories made sense to me, and I've said this before, like the Bible stories were history. I was like, yeah, Noah, Ark, animals, David and Goliath, all that stuff, just history to me. But when I first became a Christian, I went to a camp meeting, and I don't want to trace the whole story, and like, there's an altar call. I went up to the altar call. I don't know why. I don't know what the guy was talking about, and we prayed. And I don't really know what that was about, and I was crying, I don't know why, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this thing. That was kind of how it started for me as a Christian. It's like, I just felt something, and I followed that, and then I started going to church. And I started going to church, and there's a good youth group, and I was really grateful for that experience. It was really helpful for me. But then there was all these older people, and I kept being introduced to brother so-and-so. And sister so-and-so. I was like, well, that is the weirdest thing I have ever heard. Like, I know you're not related. Do I have to call him brother? Do I have to call her sister? That just felt awkward. Because when I was raised, it was when I would meet my friends who would talk about like their aunts and uncles. It was like Uncle so-and-so, Aunt so-and-so. I didn't do that. It was just, I called them by their first names. In fact, my Uncle Rob, who even saying Uncle Rob now feels weird. Like I just never would have called, because I couldn't say Rob, I could say Bubby. So he's Bubby. And his siblings, my mom, his siblings still call him Bubby. That stuck, so sorry, Uncle Rob. But I would never call him Uncle Rob. So this idea of like having a formal name, like that wasn't really who they were, was weird to me, like brother and sister. There's a part of me that actually kind of hopes that will come back, even though I know it'll like freak a lot of people out. I just think I think it's true. There's some truth there. Romans 12:10 says, "Love one another, phileo one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor." There's lots of letters. Most of the New Testament letters, Paul or the writer is writing to brothers and sisters, or referred to as brothers and sisters at another church. Like there's a connection here. We're connected. We're siblings in a way that blood siblings, birth siblings are not. Like there's a deep spiritual connection we have because of Jesus. We're brothers and sisters. There's a phileo kind of expected and extended because of Jesus. We get to share that with one another. So we're not instituting brother and sister here. You don't have to do that, but I think it'd be kind of fun to do. So phileo is this love for just something you enjoy. It's given. It's not earned. You don't earn phileo from someone else. They phileo you. They love you because they just enjoy you. So we're going to cover phileo in two different ways this morning. One is a brief kind of word study. So a word study is a great way to study the Bible or to do theology. And let me just say this. Theology isn't just for theologians. Theology just means studying God. That's all it is. So in this case, studying the Bible. And sometimes you're reading and you come across a word and you might go, well, that seems like a weird word. And what does that mean? And then you look up maybe other translations. This is a great practice to do if you're like stuck on a verse, like what does this mean? Other translations can help you because they kind of find other word combinations. It isn't changing the meaning. It's trying to help us understand the meaning. So that can help. Generally speaking, if you read a longer version, I covered this when we covered the Bible in September, but like something like The Message by Eugene Peterson, very long translations from the Greek, and he's trying to get a sense of not just what's a word for word translation, like love, like phileo for love or eros for love. That can be a little misleading because like there's different kinds of love. He's going to give you the Zargruckenzeit version of it, right? Like this is the whole thing. I didn't expect to bring that back, but wasn't that smooth? Right? Yes. So it's a good way to study. So you read a word, and like, okay, what does that mean? Look at another translation for the same verse, and then you look up that same word maybe starting with the same author. So how does Paul use this word? Because each of us have different writing styles. So Paul and Peter might use a word slightly differently, just like you and I would. Nothing wrong with that. Again, doesn't mean the Bible's not valid. It just means these are real people using real language, trying to communicate real truth to real people, and we use it differently. So we can do a word study, and then we might start with, hey, what does this verse mean? That's confusing. Let me zoom out a little bit. What's the passage mean? Maybe the surrounding passages. What does that mean? And then let me look and see, well, how does this author use this word in other books that he's written, or how do other authors use it? So culturally, how did they use this word? What did it mean? And that can help me understand that original verse. So we're going to do a very short kind of word study just to give you an example of that, of how Phileo is used. And then we're going to look at a story because I like stories. Okay, Matthew 6:5. And when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they Phileo, to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. So don't be like the hypocrites. They love to stand and pray at the synagogues. Synagogues came around after the temple was destroyed around 580 BC. And then local kind of synagogues, kind of like church buildings, begin to pop up. And as long as you had 10 men in a village, you could create a synagogue. And those were places of worship and study and teaching. And so they were important. This was like a mini representation. In the Jewish mindset, God lived in the temple, then that gets destroyed. And so they had to have a place to direct that worship, right? So God was kind of localized in some ways, is the idea. So the synagogue was a place to worship, which is great. We believe in church. Churches are good. It's good to have a place to gather. We're grateful that we get to use this facility. Nothing wrong with that. The hypocrites, though, they stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners. So they go out in a way and they pray in a way to be seen. They love it. They love to be seen praying and worshiping God. See how holy I am? See how righteous I am? See how good I am? See how close to God I am? And they do this in a way to be seen so they can up their status. Right? Jesus says, don't pray like the hypocrites. They're getting their reward. So love, Phileo, is a good thing, but unfortunately we can love good things, and praying is a good thing, and synagogues a good thing, and street corners are good things, and all that stuff. But we can love good things for the wrong reasons. So we can Phileo good things for the wrong reasons. Right? Anyone been there? This week at the college group, we talked about the heart. And just the heart is a complicated thing, right? Like we can feel quite a mix of things. Michelle, it was a meme that I had seen. She shared it last week. I had seen this meme. Actually, her cousin posted it a couple years ago. It was about love. It was, my love is like a candle. If you forget about me, I'll burn your house down, right? Like we can feel like this love and rage about the same thing or person. Like just don't push it. I'm going to go one direction or the other, right? So like love is, our hearts are complicated. We can feel many different things. And in this case, we can love good things for the wrong reason. Matthew 10:37. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever phileos, whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. So here he's not saying don't love your son or daughter, or don't love your mom or dad. Don't love your spouse. Don't love your family. He's saying if you have it out of order, then you're going to create problems here, right? So if I have things out of order, he's not saying dismiss or ignore your family, which is sometimes what has been done. It's like, well, I don't need to take care of my family. I'm just going to devote my life to holy things. Jesus is not saying that. He is saying things need to be in the right order. So in this context, you're loving the right things. You're loving Jesus, you're loving your family, but let's make sure they're in the right order. And if I love Jesus first and foremost, I'm more likely to love my family well. Right? If things are in the right order, I'm more likely to love my family well. As Michelle talked about Storge last week, we can imagine very good examples of familial affection love, but we can also imagine very stifling, suffocating, hurtful ways of giving or receiving familial love. If I can submit all that to Jesus, I'm more likely to love people the way Jesus loves people. I'm more likely to let him guide me in how I storge and how I phileo the people in my lives. Does that make sense? So we can love good things and have them out of order, out of priority. So we can love good things for the wrong reasons, and we can love good things and have them in the wrong order. So now let me tell you a story, just a quick story. This is another way of doing theology. Let's just talk about this story. And the Bible is 60% story, so Jesus wants us to learn things through story because we learn it better that way. And often, especially in our college group, we're talking about stuff. It's like, what's the answer to this question? And like, well, you want 3 points, or we'll often say, you want math. Bible doesn't give us a lot of math. Bible gives a lot of stories. Let me tell you a story about how this works out. Let me tell you a story. So how do I phileo? Let me tell you a story. Well, I want 3 easy points. Let me tell you a story. Here's a story about phileo, and it involves Jesus. Jesus and Lazarus. John 11. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. So the Gospel of John refers to the disciple whom he loved, the disciple whom Jesus loved. And there's a really good chance that's just John's way of saying, it's me, without putting himself in there. But that phrase doesn't begin until Lazarus enters the story, which is an interesting thing to think about. Jesus and Lazarus had a really close relationship. Jesus phileoed Lazarus. They were friends. He extended this affection, appreciation. He appreciated Lazarus deeply. Here, Lazarus is sick. And he's sick, and they send word to Jesus, and his response is, well, this is not a sickness that leads to death. He's going to be fine. He continues on his ministry. Meanwhile, Lazarus does die. And so as he's heading towards Bethany, he hears this, and they're saying, well, if he would have come quickly, he might have lived. And as Jesus sees the grief and the pain on the faces of his sisters and his friends, his response is to what? It's to weep. Jesus wept. It's the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. So out of phileo, he weeps. Phileo looks like that. Jesus gave him himself. Then he heals Lazarus. He raises him from the dead, and they continue, and Lazarus continues to be a part of his ministry, which I'm not saying that that's for you to do as well. I'm not putting that expectation on you, but that's what Jesus does out of phileo. He weeps. He enters into the pain of his friends, the family of Lazarus. He goes to that pain, right? That's one of the most unique aspects of Jesus compared to any other deity out there, is most of them are, if it actually is some kind of personage, they're distant. They're removed. I'm just trying to appease them. I'm trying to figure out what they want. Do I sacrifice a kid? Do I sacrifice some grain? What do I do to make you happy so I can have a good harvest or whatever? It's distant, and I'm just hoping you're not mad at me. Jesus instead walks towards our pain. That's the story. He comes as an infant, gets literal feces on his feet as he walks the streets so that we can relate to him. That's a totally different kind of God. Jesus comes and walks towards the pain of Lazarus' family. And he weeps with them, and he heals them. Phileo looks like that. I don't walk away from your pain. I don't dismiss you for your pain. I don't turn a blind eye from your pain. I don't shame you for your pain. I walk towards that. And I share it with you. Out of phileo, I share that with you. That's what phileo looks like. So if you want a story, if you want math about phileo, I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to tell you this is how Jesus phileoed Lazarus. which I know sounds like filleted, so I'm very conscious of that. Phileo looks like that. Phileo looks like entering into the pain. As we follow Jesus, we're also called to follow Jesus like in this way, right? To enter into the pain of our brothers and sisters. So as I said, this series is really a love reset. Love is a part of our lives. It is. And we sometimes love well and sometimes we don't. We have been loved well and sometimes we haven't. And so we're affected by good and bad versions of all this, right? For some of you, it may be just, it's like right on the surface. You've got stories of your own that you're trying to beat back, like where you haven't been phileoed well or storgate or erost or whatever. And it's painful. And some of you are thinking, okay, maybe I haven't done that well either. Right? We can get it right and we can get it wrong. And sometimes, almost like moment to moment, I storge well over here and I phileo terribly over here. Like moment to moment. We are complicated people. But here's the good news. The good news is that the last word is not the final word. The story is not over. It is ever unfolding. And Jesus showed and continues to show us a way to make things right. The worship team, if you want to come up. So if you're in a relationship where love is withheld and given depending on performance or mood, etc., then something is amiss. Something is off there. This is something to bring to God. Lord, what do I do about this relationship? If you find yourself withholding love, withholding phileo, then something may be amiss. This too is something to bring to God. Right? We bring our lives, and part of our lives is how we love the people around them, the people around us, the people in our lives. So we're going to sing one more song, and as we've been saying over the past few weeks, if you feel like God wants you to, I'll let you get set, God is doing some work in you, or God is saying, yep, there's some relationships we need to talk about, there's some things we can fix, then don't feel like you have to sing. Just give this time to Jesus. Lord, speak to me. Help me to phileo better. Or, I've got this relationship that is, I'm not being phileoed well. What do I do there? Because this is for us, right? So this is a time to bring those things to God and say, God, help me. He came, walked the streets, entered into our pain to help us. He's familiar with your story. He's familiar with what's wrong. He's familiar with what needs to change. He wants to help you. So just don't feel like you have to sing. Just give this time to the Lord. Let him work in your heart.